Text, a look inside Gateway Arch National Park, the Old Courthouse Part 2 with Ranger Carl. The Ranger stands next to a black and white photo of the courthouse, with completed dome and 6 white pillared entrance.
At our next stop on the tour, we're taking a look at a photograph of the building that was taken in 1862. The Old Courthouse finished construction during the second year of the Civil War. Now, it just so happens that our country's capital in Washington, D.C. was being constructed around the same time. It's believed that the country's capital in Washington, D.C. was done about a year and a half after the old construction of the Old Courthouse.
The courthouse flanked on 2 sides by several horse-drawn buggies.
In the photograph, you can see the building as it would have looked at that time period, complete with the carriages around the building as people were getting around the city of St. Louis in carriages, wagons, and buggies, and also in horse and mule-drawn trolleys that would follow different routes here in the city of St. Louis. Also in this photograph, you can see the turtle icon on the gates of the Old Courthouse. Now, these turtle icons are not historic to this building. The National Park Service added them when they restored the fence around the building after it was no longer used as a courthouse.
A fence with vertically aligned turtle sculptures and interlocking rings.
The story goes back to a man named Mr. Quigley, who worked here in the courthouse as a custodian. And the story goes that he had a pet turtle that he kept in a fountain out in one of the courtyards of the Old Courthouse. And the running joke was that the turtle was the only thing that didn't cost taxpayers money. On our next stop, we're going to take a look at the construction of the dome of the Old Courthouse.
The Ranger stands in front of a black and white photo of the unfinished dome.
In our next stop here in the Old Courthouse, we're taking a look at a photograph of the dome of the building under construction in the early 1860s.
The vertical and horizontal iron ribs of the exposed dome.
What you have to remember is that the dome on this building is made of 2 types of metal, cast iron and wrought iron. This would be the first dome of its type on a public building here in the United States, predating the U.S. Capitol dome by about a year and a half. So before they built the eventual dome on the building, they had to run some tests on a model, a scale model, which you can see here in the lower corner of the photograph.
A scale model of a dome with exposed iron ribs.
In this photograph, you're seeing a model of a dome loaded on top of a platform. There are 6 tons of iron bars. The iron bars were allowed to rest on top of the model to see if the model would be able to hold the weight of the dome. Those were some concerns. Would the building, which is mostly a brick and masonry structure, be allowed, or could it hold the weight of the dome? And would the dome be able to hold and support its own weight as well? So the purpose of the model was to get some of that testing done. Well, the scale model passed the testing, and then later on, they began construction of the dome of the building. These ribs on top of the courthouse are made of both cast and wrought iron. They were brought to the site through the south end of the building. This is Market Street over here in the south end of the building. And then these ribs were then brought through the hallway and hoisted up through the center of the building and put into place. On top of the cast and wrought iron skeleton of the dome, they put a layer of wood and then a layer of copper on top of that. You could not put the copper directly on top of the cast and wrought iron, otherwise you get a chemical reaction. Imagine being one of these construction workers constructing, at that time, what would be the tallest building in the city of St. Louis. So this is 1862 and this was completed. If we fast forward in time to 1962, when they were digging the foundations and pouring the foundations for the north and south legs of the Gateway Arch, those construction workers were building what would then be the tallest thing in St. Louis. But even though they were 100 years apart from one another, the construction workers building this dome and the construction workers building the Gateway Arch, which is our country's tallest national monument at 630 feet tall, none of those construction workers were wearing any kind of safety apparatus or safety harnesses when they were working on the jobs doing these things. They were building the Gateway Arch and building the Old Courthouse dome. This would be the first of its type in our country. It would predate the U.S. Capitol dome by a year and a half.
Logo NPS Arrowhead. Text Gateway Arch National Park, St. Louis, Missouri